when you were writing, did you think about it as a larger work as you were writing it? Did you have a vision of what you wanted the overall project to be, the end point?
I'd say yes and no. I knew that I wanted to write an essay. I knew that I wanted it to be prose. I also wondered if maybe that's what it would first be, but then it would turn into poetry if I didn't like it, which is kind of funny because I definitely think of myself primarily as a poet, and it's a more comfortable space for me. So I was definitely outside my comfort zone, and it was harder in a way to write the essay and the other essays I've written since. But I hope that I would be able to do it, and that but I think I had in the back of my mind, well, if you can't do it, you can write a poem. Because the poems are just really have become, because I've been doing it so long, and it's my primary way of writing. They're not always comfortable, but it's a space I feel more at home in, I think. But I didn't think the essay would be as long as it is, and I didn't. I really want to write, and I still want to write like these really little tiny short essays, but I don't know that I'm capable. I mean, similarly, after I finished this essay, I just finished an essay on shame that's longer than this one. And I wanted it to be about embarrassment. I just wanted to write about embarrassment. And then before I knew it, I was writing about shame, and I'm like, I guess I just take the darker, more like fraught subject, just like I wanted to write little essays, But one can't. I mean, you can't dictate to yourself. The work has to dictate to you, I think, which is another shared characteristic between writing poetries and this essay for me. I really have to listen to the work and see what needs to happen next, and not to myself, because if I listen to myself, I'm not gonna really like what the result is, I think.
Yeah, how would you balance, how do you balance, or how would you suggest balancing these two difficult poles for a writer of envisioning a project and having this, sort of sublime this sublime goal of I'm going to write 12 sonnets, or I'm going to write whatever it is, this chapbook or this book of essays, and following the work where it takes you?
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard question. I think it's something that one learns how to do the more they do it. I don't think I was good at that at the beginning. I might not still be good at it. I might find out later that I'm still terrible at it, or I was terrible at it at this point, but hopefully later. Anyway, I think it is a hard line. For poetry, what I do is I read it out loud. I record myself reading it out loud, and I can hear when I'm not going somewhere that the work wants me to go. I can hear when I'm going somewhere I want to go. With the essays, maybe that's still why I really rely on outside readers, because I when they tell me this should go, I'm like, yes, you're right. But I don't trust yet fully my own decisions in that way, or I'm just not. I can't fully hear it yet in the way that I think I can more easily with poetry now. So I don't know. I mean, advice would be make sure you have good readers who are patient and will read this stuff. But I think also, I'm sure there's a listening element, just like there is in poetry, where I can kind of hear that the essay's going over here, and it's like kind of bogged down. That's the way I think of it. It gets, at least that's my writing challenge generally. It gets bogged down with something, again, wanting to have too much information, or wanting to fit that thing in there that you were first interested in that may not fit anymore, or whatever. You can hear it getting bogged down. You can feel it getting bogged down.
So when you say hear, you both mean hear with the ear and with an intuitive inner ear.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. You were one of my teachers in my master's program, and when I came in, one of my goals was figuring out how to make a chapbook, because I had all these poems. They clearly went together. I had written them together, and I felt very lost in figuring out how to put them together. You were instrumental in helping me understand the next step. Do you remember the advice that you gave me then?
I might have said something like, put it all out there, like lay it all out there, because that's something that I do. And
Like physically.
yeah, physically, and move around it. I mean, I think that I always wanted to be a visual artist. Like, I wanted a studio where I could just, like, have a mess. Like, I could make a mess and leave it, and it would still be that mess when I came back, and I could see it differently because I left it. So I think I try to recreate that sometimes, and I know that I give that advice, and I remember actually quite well a conversation that we had. I don't know how many years ago it was, Sarah, but...
I have to do math. I
I
don't
know,
want to do math.
let's not do the math. Yeah, I always think, I think, that's why I think hearing it, not that poetry and the essays aren't auditory to begin with, but getting a sense, one of the senses involved, laying it out so you can see it, helps to tap into that intuitive element that is crucial in throughout the whole process, but I think sometimes we can shut that off in the revision process. It's like more at play. We have to have it at play when we're writing, or else because it's an integral part of the imaginary process. But I think we think of revision as something other than that, which it's writing too. It's a creative process. It involves an ability to see beyond the thing, which is a kind of imaginary ability. An imaginative ability or something along those lines. So I guess I try to find ways to turn it back on during the revision process.
It's interesting. I've always been a little skeptical of that John Cage quote that you can't create and analyze at the same time. I'm not sure I totally believe that.
Yeah.
But I think there's an aspect of that in the revision and the reordering. And maybe for me, when we lay the poems out, beyond intuition, I can physically see the matrix of where one theme connects to another poem at the opening or the end more easily.
Absolutely.
When it's mapped out at a sort of matrix in front of me, as opposed to trying to hold it all in my head about how one fits next to another.
Yeah, that is I think good. Like trying to hold it in your head. That's the part that doesn't work. It has to be it has to be expansive. It has to have its place outside and expand itself so you can really see what's there.
Right, and maybe that makes room for either analysis or like creative intuition to come in.
Yeah. I don't know that you can't do both either. I mean, I think you can certainly turn off. I mean, if anything, it goes this way, like once you start to do analysis, you're going to turn off to a certain extent if you just go too far down that route. But I mean, there's a way to do analysis that's also creative.
I mean, it seems to me like they can be two routes, but I also feel like half the time my creative poetry when I'm writing is a sort of analysis of the world. It's like a way to metabolize and understand and put the world together, and there's no way to take all analysis out of that.
Right. No, I agree with that for sure.
And in a reiterative writing process where you're learning as you write, you're constantly rewriting and looking at how one word fits to another, and that seems inherently analytical to me as well.
Right. And I mean, everybody's writing and revision process is different too. So, some people write and they do not revise as they write at all, and then they later revise. But many people write and revise as they're writing. So it's not like you're, going to be able to just, there's some place where they meet. So that makes more sense to think of them as at least touching.
I agree. So I think we've answered that question.
Okay, we're done.